Hello and welcome to another episode of Bronze Dad. This video I'm making today is Esport Psychology 101, and I plan to go over why esport psychology is a thing, and I'll talk a little bit about the history of it and why it's important and what it does. I feel this is kind of an important topic for a lot of gamers and especially casual gamers because a lot of our esport athletes are working on teams that have esport psychologists, people who are working with them to work on their mental game, and hopefully as this video progresses you can see why it's an important thing and why casual gamers can benefit from it as well. And so let's get into this. Sport psychology, it was an interesting science as I got into it. I took some notes and I started learning a few things. It's interesting because there's many fields that sports psychology delves into: biomechanics, physiology, kinesiology, psychology. Those are all things that sports psychology delves into, and overall it involves the study of how psychological factors affect performance and how participation in sport and exercise affect physiological and physical factors. And I have some notes here, sorry if I'm looking down. But there's some cool things that they do. They train some psychological skills, some things that help people to pay attention and improve their game, whether it's sports that are traditional or esports. So a little bit of our history here. Sports psychology began with physical education teachers. They began noticing that there were psychological issues with some of the physical aspects of the game, such as hitting a fastball in baseball or trying to hit a golf ball down the fairway in golf. And they realized early on that there were some things that were mental about sports as well. One of the first sports psychologists here was Coleman Griffith. He was America's first sports psychologist. He's got kind of an interesting history if you want to look more into it. I'm not going to delve into it here, but he really started looking at psychology and sports and putting the two together. Sports psychology kind of became a thing when our U.S. Olympic team started hiring athletes here in the United States in 1985. What they saw was in 1984 there were Olympic teams from other countries that were hiring sports psychologists to help them with their game. And so we started copying that trend because if it worked for people in Europe and different countries there and we could see some benefits, then there must be something that would help us out. And so in the 1996 Summer Olympics, the U.S. already had over 20 sports psychologists that were working with our athletes. And it was pretty interesting reading through a lot of that and how that came to be. There are 5 common techniques that surround sports psychology, and I will have other videos that will focus on these different techniques, but I'll give you just kind of a brief overview here. Arousal regulation, that sounds like what? But what it does is it helps you regulate your emotions. Are you paying attention? Are you able to notice the important things that you need to notice? Or are you too hyped up? You can see this in esports. Some of our pros, sometimes they get down in a funk. They feel like, I can't hit any skill shots. And so they get down on themselves, and that emotion can be negative. Or sometimes you can tunnel because you feel like you're invincible and you're moving on, and you need to be mindful and kind of be aware of everything that's going on with you. So that's where arousal regulation really comes into play. And like I said, I'll have other videos that will go into this a little more. Goal setting, that's one of the things that really helps athletes. You're not going to win in esports every game you play. Sometimes if you're losing a game and your teammates won't surrender, it's better to play the game out and say, okay, this game I'm going to work on my warding, or I'm going to work on positioning in team fights. Set some goals. That way the time you spend in that game is not a complete loss. And you also can set goals outside the game, things that you want to do better to improve your play. So that's another technique that sports psychology can help you with. Imagery. That's a big one for a lot of athletes. You'll have baseball players that will visualize themselves standing at the plate hitting the home run. As the pitcher throws the fastball, and they visualize the technique they use to swing and hit the ball and make connection with the bat. There's a lot of really cool things you can do with imagery, and I'll also talk about that in other videos. Pre-performance routines. That is really kind of a big thing in a lot of sports. A lot of people have seen it. When you watch a basketball player stand at the foul line and he has his routine and he will dribble the ball 3 times and say something under his breath or spin the ball backwards or whatever it is that he will do. I'm thinking Karl Malone from the Jazz was well known for his foul shots, and he had a string of foul shots that were made that was amazing, and he had this pre-performance routine before he would shoot that foul shot. Other famous athletes who you might be familiar with, Kershaw of the Dodgers. He's a pitcher, and he has a routine where he goes out on the field every game and does the same routine over and over when he is to pitch, and so it puts him in the zone and it gets him ready to play. You'll see some of these things in esports as well. And then the last technique that I want to talk about is self-talk, and the things we tell ourselves in our head. For me, I'm a 40-year-old competing with teenagers and 20-year-olds playing this game, and I had some problems with saying, well, I'm old and I can't keep up as I play League of Legends. My reflexes aren't as fast, and I can't compete with these kids. And some of that negative self-talk was really kind of dragging me down until I realized, Skara is a player that's been around for a while, and he says that he's played long enough that he can't compete. He doesn't have the reflexes, but he does have the experience, and his movements and things are just kind of reflex with what he does. And he's still pretty good. He's at the top of his game still for his age. So these are some techniques I want to talk about in other videos, and hopefully you can see some ideas already of how to improve your own play with this. I want to kind of go over some definitions of esports and where the psychology comes in. You have a sports psychologist, and these are people who are certified. They have a doctorate degree. Some of them have master's degrees. But the true psychologists have a doctorate degree, and they're licensed, and they're a psychologist. And if you Google sports psychologist, you'll have a whole bunch of people that pop up that have their doctoral degree, and they have these programs, and they work with athletes from high school all the way into the pros, and they do a lot of clinical stuff, and it's really interesting. And so I looked at that and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to get a doctoral degree now. I'm a teacher, and I have what I have, and I'm a little older and have a job and a family to support, so I don't really have time to go back to school to get my doctoral degree. But there are others, like a sports psychology consultant, people who have a master's degree, who can consult. They're also licensed, albeit it's a different license than the sports psychologist. Sometimes these are psychologists that have a master's degree in psychology. Sometimes there's somebody who is a coach and has a degree in coaching. They have something physical if they want to work as a consultant. Maybe it's in baseball, and so they can work with baseball players. The third type here is a mentor or a coach. That's the category I fall under. Somebody, and this is somebody who's knowledgeable about it, maybe not necessarily somebody who's certified. I'm a teacher. I have coached some sports. I like League of Legends. I've coached some of my own kids through it, and taught them how to play the game. And so I have experience coaching, and I can mentor, and I can do things. But I obviously do not have the expertise that a true psychologist or a psychology consultant has in that. What you see with these guys, working psychs, there's a couple that are pretty famous. There are others, but I just kind of wanted to focus on these two. Weldon Green, he's currently the coach of Counterlogic Gaming in League of Legends, and he is a psychologist. He's got a YouTube channel. He's taught a lot of things dealing with psychology. I would imagine with his coaching, a lot of his time is going to be spent there rather than making videos and putting up VODs. But he is a working psychologist who has worked with a lot of teams. He's worked with G2, he's worked with Fnatic, he's worked with TSM, some of these big European and NA LCS teams. He's done really well. If you go on YouTube and you type in Esport Psychology, another psychologist that will pop up quite often is Mia Stelberg. She helped with the Counter-Strike team, and there's a pretty sweet video what she did to help them out. And so I'd encourage you to type that in and go check her stuff out, because these two have done some amazing things with the teams they've worked with. Now about me, I do have a social studies bachelor's degree in Bachelor's of Science. That certifies me to teach psychology to high school kids. I can also teach anthropology and a lot of different things, history, geography, but psychology is one of those things that I am certified to teach. I'm a 13-year special education teacher, and special education has a lot of psychology in it. I'm involved with working with school psychologists, and I've learned a lot over the years working with my students and teachers about developmental psychology and about behavioralism and how behavior is communication, and I can get into that with League of Legends and esports. I do focus on League of Legends because that's the game I like to play, but what you'll see is a lot of what I'm going to talk about in my video series on esports psychology can work for other games like Counter-Strike or Overwatch or Rocket League or Fortnite, any of these big names. A lot of the ideas that these videos will show you, you can take these ideas and principles and use it to improve your game there. I know this because I also have coached traditional sports. I've coached middle school basketball, and I've also coached track. I've seen the mental side of those games. I've worked with athletes, middle school range. These are prepubescents, all the way to 14, 15-year-old kids that a lot is put on them when you put a kid up there on the foul line to win a tournament in a game. There's a lot of mental game that goes on for these kids. I'm a casual League of Legends player. I've been stuck in bronze because I don't play enough. If I want to climb a little better, and I want to this year, I need to put some more time into it. And I'm also the parent of gamers. I have 3 sons that play League of Legends. 2 of them are ranked silver. They play a lot more than I do. And sometimes I play with them and I queue up in solo queue, and when we play a game and they get tilted and they start to get toxic, I kind of talk them down from that and help them to work through some of those issues. So anyways, I hope you enjoy this video. Thanks for watching this intro video to esports psychology, and we'll see you next time, and hopefully we'll be able to help you out with some of your play. Thanks a lot.